friends. Let's make a painting together. I'm Dandridge Reed. I'm a local artist and teacher here with the Woodlands Arts Council. For me, nothing lets me know that the holidays are right around the corner when I start seeing decorations pop up and I get to start to think about the time I'm going to get to spend with friends and family. We're going to take this art kit that you got and make a little holiday painting for you to hang up and enjoy. Alright, so what we're going to be creating today is going to be a little holiday painting that you can display for the season. Let's take a look at our kit and see what we have. So in your kit, you'll have several things. You'll have a set of watercolor paints, an additional paintbrush, a cup for water, a few adhesive magnets, a piece of parchment paper, and 2 sheets of watercolor paper. Set up, we're going to put down our parchment paper. We're going to set up our paints fairly close to our working area. Our water cup will be over here on the side. When you get your brush, oftentimes they'll come with a plastic piece over the bristles. You just remove that and throw that away. You'll find a second brush inside your watercolor palette. We'll use the paper towel periodically to dry our brush, and then the magnets we'll use after we're finished, so we can set those aside for now. Now, one of the things that you're going to do is to put a couple drops of water in each of the ovals of paint. This is what we call waking up the paint, and it allows it to activate and become usable. Now, our first technique, wet on dry, we'll get a little paint on our brush. And when we go on here, the paper is dry and the paint is wet. And so we can use just the tip of our brush to make finer lines. We can push the whole brush down to make thicker lines. But that's the wet on dry technique. You can see that it gives us nice clean edges and a little bit more control over our brush. The next technique is wet on wet. In wet on wet, you'll have some water already on the paper. Once you have that area wet, we're going to get a little bit of that paint. And you'll see how that pigment really spreads out and changes, and you don't have the same kind of control. In a piece like this, the wet on dry was used in the foliage to let it dry between layers, and the wet on wet technique used in the ornaments to create that spread. Before we fill up our cup with water, one thing we might want to do is use this cup to trace the circle for our ornament. So let's look at how we can do that. I'm going to use a pencil and just lightly trace around. So we have our clean water, we have our palette, and remember we already put a few drops in each oval to wake up the colors. Now I'm going to start to mix my color. Now with watercolor, it's helpful to take and to put a little bit of water in the lid and make a little puddle. With watercolor, you use the water to mix your paints. You don't always want to do it just out of here. For this first layer, I want to use a really light red. I'm going to do some light red on my ornament with some blue lines. So I'm going to get that watercolor and I'm going to put it in the little puddle of water. Now another thing I'm going to use is some junk mail. And that way I can test and see just how dark my color is. Now that I have the light pink mixed, I'm going to add that in the circle area for my ornament. When I do this, I don't worry about it being totally even because I like the look of the watercolor when it has different strengths of color in different places. I'm going to rinse my brush before I go to a different color, and I'm going to add some little blue lines. And when I do my lines, I'm going to make them a little bit curved. That way it feels like those lines are wrapping around the ornament. I'm going to rinse my brush off, and I'm going to give it a few minutes to dry before I add the next step. Alright, so we've given our painting a few minutes to dry. I'm going to come back in, and I'm just going to draw at the top of it a little rectangle. That little rectangle is going to be the top part of the ornament. Use a little bit of that yellow paint. I'm going to do a layer of yellow first on the top of that ornament. Now while I'm letting that yellow dry for the top of the ornament, I'm going to go ahead and mix up our first color of green for the foliage. So I'm going to get a little bit of the water, put it over here in the lid. I'm going to get a little bit of that green paint on my brush, mix that in with the water, and make me some green paint. Now to make it look more of a Christmas tree green, I'm going to put a little bit of yellow in it also. So I'm going to rinse my brush before I get the yellow paint. I'm going to dry my brush off on my paper towel just a little bit. Then I get some of that yellow paint on my brush to mix in with the green. We can test and see what that color looks like on our little envelope. Now I'm going to use the smaller of the brushes to start and do my foliage. I'm going to get a little bit of this green that I mixed. And we're going to do just a few little marks coming out from the top of the ornament to feel like that branch and to indicate the tree that it might be hanging in. These don't have to be real planned marks. This can be loose. Now while I'm letting that dry, I'm going to mix up just a little bit different color of green so I can layer a couple colors in there. Sometimes it's kind of tricky to know when you look at your watercolor palette which color is which when you get into these darker ones because they all look a little bit alike. So I know that this one is blue, and if you want to make sure, you can always test and do a little bit of that mark, and then on your scrap piece of paper you can do a little dot and see, okay, that first one's blue. Then next to it should be purple. And then some brown. And then the last one will be black. To make this green a little bit darker, I'm going to add a little bit of this brown into it. Now while I was giving a minute for that green layer to dry, I went ahead and got new water. Now one of the things with watercolor is that it's important to give it a little bit of dry time, and to always, when your water starts to look a little dirty, go ahead and get some fresh water. Now I'm going to take the smaller brush, that green-brown color that we mixed, that dark green, I'm going to get a little bit of that on the brush. So we're going to come in, I'm going to just do a few little lines on top of the lighter green that I already did. This is just to give it a little bit of texture. I'm going to come in and have a little bit of line work coming off of the sides. Alright, so as you're working on your watercolor, you can add whatever kind of layering you want to. If you let it dry in between layers, you're going to get better results. You can add more details on top. I'm going to go ahead and add one more layer of some darker brown on the branches. Yeah, I think I actually want to add in a little bit more blue. Just adding a little bit on one side to create a little bit of a shadow effect. It'll make the ornament seem like it's a little more three-dimensional. I'm going to add a little detail for the hook. I'm going to go ahead and add the word joy down here. I'm going to do this in black. You could use any color you want. The black will just stand out nicely next to the watercolor. Alright, when we finish painting our lovely holiday painting, the next thing is going to be to attach the magnets on the back. You can take the paper towel that you've been using to blot your paintbrush on to get all the extra paint out of the lid of your palette. We just have to attach the magnets to the back. I'm going to take these adhesive magnets, peel the paper off, make sure which side's up. I'm going to put them in the top corners. Now it's all set to hang on your refrigerator. Well, I know I had a great time making this painting. I hope you did too. And from the Woodlands Arts Council, happy holidays and thank you for helping us make art matter.